The governor of Texas is expressing support for Border Patrol agents seen in viral photographs earlier this month. The images showed them on horseback forcefully blocking Haitian migrants at the U.S. Mexico border. After President Biden announced an investigation into the incident, Governor Greg Abbott on Sunday made the agents this offer.
They wouldn't have been in that situation had the Biden administration enforced the immigration laws and secured the border in the first place. So what the president said, going after the Border Patrol who were risking their lives and working so hard to try to secure the border, if he takes any action against them whatsoever, I have worked side by side with those Border Patrol agents. I want them to know something. If they are at risk of losing their job, at a president who is abandoning his duty to secure the border, you have a job in the state of Texas. I will hire you to help Texas secure our border.
Politico reports on a growing split among Democrats over the Biden administration's handling of thousands who crossed into Del Rio, Texas. Some feel the president is breaking his promise to enact a more humane immigration system, as his government uses a Trump-era pandemic policy to expel many migrants before they can seek asylum in the U.S. It is a political cost that's revealing a, quote, crack in the Democratic coalition that threatens the party's morale and unity in advance of the 2022 midterms. Sabrina Rodriguez joins me now with more on her reporting. She is a national political correspondent for Politico. Sabrina, welcome. Thanks very much for being with us. You know, this is an issue we've covered a lot here on Red and Blue. Early on, when the president was enjoying better approval ratings, we always understood that immigration was the place where his approval rating was not as strong. And now we are seeing really this issue break into the fore yet again. Who are some of the unexpected voices criticizing the Biden administration's immigration policies?
Yeah, Elaine, I mean, we've seen from the beginning of this administration that Biden has struggled with immigration, but we have seen a majority to some extent of the Democratic caucus stay quiet or, you know, just a very moderate amount of criticism for the president in hopes that things would change. But this situation that we've seen in the past week with Haitian migrants arriving at the border has been that turning point for many. They say, you know, at this point, we've seen the president, you know, we're heading on 10 months of the presidency, and he's still using the Trump era public policy and public health order, Title 42, to send migrants back to their home countries without seeking asylum. So some of the faces we saw this past week were some of the top members of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congressional Hispanic Caucus, Asian Pacific Islanders Caucus. We saw as far up as Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer saying how bad the Biden administration is doing on immigration at this point.
Well, Politico has been speaking with reporters on the ground in Del Rio, Texas. What are you learning about the circumstances of this mass influx of Haitian migrants?
So we're seeing a lot of just misinformation going around. That's a real reason why we've seen the Haitian migrants arrive at the time that they did. My colleague Jack Herrera was down at the border for the past few days and got to talk to many of the migrants as they were coming in, as well as immigration attorneys that are dealing with the migrants that are being allowed in or being sent back. And we've heard a mix of, you know, some that had just been waiting for a long time in Mexico to be able to come, some that have been hearing that with Mexican Independence Day on September 16th, that might be a better day to cross because some of the enforcement authorities would be preoccupied celebrating. It really comes down to that word of mouth of folks that are using WhatsApp or Haitian social media, that word spread and resulted in so many arriving at one time in Del Rio, Texas.
Yeah, at one point there were some 15,000 Haitian migrants in Del Rio, Texas. Where do things stand now?
As of today, we've heard that the makeshift camp under the International Bridge in Del Rio has been cleared out completely. Most of the migrants that have that arrived at that camp have either been deported or are in processing centers throughout the U.S. Mexico border. Some of them are being allowed in and are being processed for their asylum claims, but the majority are going to be sent back under Title 42. It's just a matter of capacity of processing them, putting them on planes. And then there's another chunk that, out of fear of getting sent back, have gone back into Mexico. And it's only a matter of time, some of the immigration attorneys say, that they will, attempt again to be able to come into the United States and seek asylum.
Well, how do local residents feel about these migrants? Because we've seen images on social media of, at one point, some store shelves in Del Rio, Texas, that looked like essentially, people have been preparing for a storm. I mean, they were wiped clean. How is it that residents are feeling about this situation?
It's been a mixed bag of reaction. I mean, the reality is, as you mentioned, that estimated number of about 15,000 migrants, they were right at the border of Del Rio, a town that has a population of about 35,000 people. So it's a town that did not have the capacity to necessarily take in 15,000 people if the U.S., if the Biden administration said, okay, we're going to allow all these people to come in and seek asylum at this point. So some of these towns are saying, we really feel for the people at the border, but there is just not an infrastructure in place to take in all these people. Some of them agree and agree with some of the Democratic Party and saying, okay, well, we need to build up a system that can have that capacity. And others are saying it's not the U.S.'s responsibility to take in folks. So it is a mixed bag, but they're the ones that are really living the day-to-day when members of the community are part of Border Patrol or are part of, the humanitarian organizations that are working along the border.
And Sabrina, at the top, we mentioned Governor Abbott. Governor Greg Abbott has been a staunch opponent of President Biden on a few fronts. The governor's approval rating has recently dropped double digits, with an increasing number of Texans concerned the state is heading in the wrong direction. Is it clear, Sabrina, what's driving those numbers?
So it appears that it's a combination of things at this point. We've seen the governor pursue a number of controversial decisions in the past few months, whether that be him looking to, put in place an executive order that would have barred U.S. officials from moving migrants, which would have created a bottleneck at the border and worsening situation. The courts ultimately halted that, but that created some frustration in the state. Then we saw recently the abortion ban that has gotten, national attention at this point. And we're talking about as well, COVID and the fact that with the Delta variant over this summer, we have seen a bigger spread of the virus. We have seen more deaths, and he has been one of the biggest faces against, mask mandates and some of the practical measures that we hear, public health officials talking about. So it could be a combination of all those things, but one thing to definitely watch is whether this is going to be the moment and the impetus for Beto O'Rourke to join the governor's race. A lot of people are expecting him to do that.
Yeah, it's something that we've been hearing about, and it'll be fascinating to see how that dynamic all plays out. Sabrina Rodriguez for us. Sabrina, thank you very much.
Thank you.